Have you ever wondered what secrets ancient artifacts could reveal? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where we uncover hidden stories from history. Today, we explore 6 remarkable treasures that have survived thousands of years. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's step into the past and discover their stories. The letters that united kings. Beneath the shifting sands of Middle Egypt, near a place once called Akhetaton, the city of the sun's horizon, there slept a series of small, unassuming clay tablets. For centuries they lay buried in silence, forgotten by both desert winds and the living. Yet these tablets were not ordinary records. They were words once carried across deserts and seas, between kings and queens, envoys and empires, etched in cuneiform script, the language of diplomacy, long before nations even had borders. They are known today as the Amarna letters, a chorus of voices that still speak across 3,000 years, whispering of politics, promises, and human frailty. The story begins in the 14th century BCE, when Egypt stood at its golden height under Pharaoh Amenhotep III, and later, his son Akhenaten, the pharaoh who worshipped the sun's disk, Aten, and dared to reshape Egypt's religion and capital. His new city, Akhenaten, was born out of stone and sunlight, a place meant to reflect divine harmony. Yet even in the radiant heart of this utopia, the world outside Egypt pulsed with tension. Kings of Babylon, Assyria, Mitanni, and Hatti all sought alliances, marriages, and gold. Trade routes carried not only goods but gossip, and so the letters began to flow. Each tablet, shaped by a scribe's careful hand, bears a message in Akkadian, the diplomatic lingua franca of the time. Written in wedge-like strokes pressed into damp clay, the words were dried and sealed, then carried by messengers across mountains and deserts, through rival territories toward Egypt's royal court. The journey could take months, yet when a letter arrived, it was no small event. It might bear the seal of a king, it might demand tribute, propose a royal marriage, or whisper of betrayal. The letters were political lifelines, tangible threads connecting Egypt to the great powers of the ancient Near East. One such letter came from the king of Babylon, Khasitarp-Bernaburiash II, who reminded the pharaoh that their ancestors had exchanged gifts of gold and lapis lazuli. "Send me much gold," he wrote, "gold in abundance." His tone was cordial, yet edged with pride. Another came from the king of Mitanni, Tushratta, whose daughter had married Pharaoh Amenhotep III. His words were almost plaintive, expressing both affection and complaint. "You sent me little gold, yet I hear in my land that in Egypt gold is like dust. These are not lifeless relics, they are voices caught mid-conversation, an ancient inbox, full of diplomacy, vanity, and longing." Some kings pleaded for troops, others for brides. Some complained of treachery in border towns, others offered gifts in exchange for Egyptian favor. One letter, almost casual, speaks of a shipment of statues gone missing en route. Another mentions a certain queen, perhaps Nefertiti, negotiating with foreign rulers. But amid the formal language of kings, there are letters that feel deeply human. One envoy wrote of starvation among his men. Another described being imprisoned by a rival city. A few letters even betray exhaustion, as if the scribes themselves grew weary of politics that spanned too many lifetimes. In one remarkable letter, a local ruler writes to Akhenaten, begging for help, warning that neighboring tribes are attacking, and that his people will not survive without aid. His plea was likely never answered. As archaeologists uncovered these letters in the 1880s, they were astonished not only by their preservation, but by their intimacy. Over 380 tablets were found. Many broken yet still legible, their surfaces etched with slanted lines of Akkadian. Some were official correspondences from foreign rulers, others from smaller city-states that looked to Egypt for protection. Collectively, they offer a map of the ancient political world, showing Egypt not as an isolated kingdom, but as a hub in a vast, interconnected network. The letters tell of gifts sent in friendship: gold from Egypt, horses and lapis from Mesopotamia, ivory and wood from Canaan. They tell of marriage alliances binding distant kingdoms, of princesses sent across continents to wed pharaohs. And they tell, too, of tension, of rulers feeling neglected by Egypt's lavish promises, of envoys held hostage when politics soured. Through these letters, we glimpse a fragile world order. Egypt's gold bought loyalty, but only just. Smaller states, like those in Canaan and Syria, were constantly on the brink of revolt. The Amorites and Hittites pressed on their borders, and while kings flattered Akhenaten with titles like "my brother" and "my son," behind their words lay fear of losing Egypt's favor, fear of falling into obscurity. But beyond politics, there is poetry in these tablets. The phrases repeat like hymns: "To the king my lord, my sun god, the breath of my life." The writers bowed low in words before the pharaoh, promising eternal loyalty. Their humility was formulaic, yes, but in it we sense awe. To them, Egypt's king was more than mortal. He was the axis around which the world spun, and yet even this divine order cracked. As Akhenaten turned inward, focusing on his god Akhenaten and the art of light and stillness, his empire trembled. The letters from outlying vassals grew desperate. "Why have you not sent soldiers?" they pleaded. "Our cities are burning." But the replies never came. Akhenaten, radiant and remote, seemed to have closed its ears. When Akhenaten died, chaos followed. His city was abandoned, his name erased, but the tablets, the letters no one thought to carry away, remained, waiting. Buried under centuries of dust, they endured when marble temples crumbled, and when they were found again, they reconnected those lost voices. Egyptian, Babylonian, Hittite, Canaanite, across millennia. Today they rest in museums, brittle, fragile, and yet somehow alive. Their surfaces still shimmer faintly with the echo of human need, the urge to reach out, to persuade, to be remembered. Each letter is a reminder that diplomacy, for all its grandeur, is built on the same fragile foundation as every human relationship: trust, envy, and hope. Imagine for a moment the quiet of Akhenaten's archives in their prime. The scribes sit cross-legged on the cool stone floor, reed styluses clicking softly against wet clay. Each word is pressed with precision, for these are not casual notes, they are history being formed. Somewhere in the distance, the city hums with prayers to Aten, the sun blazing above limestone cliffs. And in that golden light, letters are sealed, dried, and prepared for their long journeys into uncertainty. The Amarna letters are not only the oldest international correspondence ever found, they are proof that even in the ancient world, words had power beyond borders. They reveal how empires were built not only by armies but by dialogue, by the fragile art of understanding across distance. And though the hands that shaped them have long turned to dust, their words endure, still crossing the centuries, still carrying the pulse of kings, and still reminding us that the oldest form of diplomacy is, and always will be, the human desire to be heard. Even now, when you look at those tablets behind glass, you can almost feel the hum of their journey, the murmur of envoys, the scratching of styluses, the heat of the sun that once baked them. They were born in a world of empires, yet they speak, softly and eternally, of the same truth that binds all history together, that words, when carried with purpose, never truly fade. When the archaeologists first brushed the dust from those small, wedge-marked tablets in 1887, they could hardly have imagined what they were holding. At first glance, the Amarna letters seemed almost plain, brown clay, crumbling at the edges, covered in lines that looked more like scratches than words. But under those faint strokes lay the voices of an entire world, captured mid-sentence. As scholars began translating them, a network of stories unfolded, a web of kings, queens, envoys, and messengers bound together by diplomacy and desire. The letters were unlike any other find in Egypt, for they weren't written in Egyptian hieroglyphs but in Akkadian, the language of Mesopotamia, and the chosen medium of international politics. In a time when travel took months, and communication relied on trust, these tablets were the lifeline of empire. Each one carried tension within its clay. You could almost feel the pressure of the scribe's stylus as he recorded his master's demands. Some were polite, others nearly seething with impatience, and some carried a desperate tone that transcended centuries. From the city of Byblos came one such voice, Ribhada, its ruler, who wrote dozens of letters to the pharaoh. His city was under attack, his allies were turning against him, and his supplies were vanishing. In letter after letter, he begged Egypt for help. May the king send archers to his servant, or all is lost. His pleas went unanswered. By the time the last message reached Akhenaten, Ribhada was likely dead, his city overtaken. His final words, pressed into clay, still survive, his fear preserved as perfectly as the form of the letters themselves. Other letters reveal a more delicate dance, one of status and pride. Kings called each other brother as a sign of equality, but the balance of power was always shifting. The ruler of Babylon often reminded Egypt of their shared prestige, complaining if his gifts were smaller or fewer. The Hittite kings were bold, sending proposals for marriages and alliances, and vassals from the Levant wrote in careful humility, always reminding the pharaoh that they were his servants beneath the dust of his feet. One particularly fascinating letter comes from the king of Elachia, modern-day Cyprus. He sent copper as tribute and apologized for the shipment being late, blaming storms at sea. His tone is weary but respectful, as though aware that Egypt's patience was as fragile as the clay his words were written on. It is diplomacy written in the language of survival. Even more intriguing are the personal notes, letters exchanged not by kings but by queens. One queen of Babylon, widowed, writes to Egypt pleading for marriage to one of its princes. Why, she asks, should I be made to weep every day? Her words are sorrowful, edged with loneliness and politics alike. Her request, historians believe, may have led to tragedy. The prince she was promised never reached her. He was murdered on his journey north. The letter remains, a record of a plan that turned into loss. The Amarna letters are not only historical, they are emotional. They reveal, more clearly than any monument, that even the most powerful were still human. They flattered, they begged, they argued, they feared. Their hands may have held scepters, but their words trembled. When these letters were uncovered, they changed how historians understood the late Bronze Age. For centuries, Egypt had seemed isolated, aloof in its desert grandeur. But these tablets told a different story. They showed an interconnected world where ideas, art, and power flowed freely from kingdom to kingdom. The same gold that adorned Egyptian tombs may once have been a diplomatic gift to Mitanni or Babylon. The horses that pulled Egyptian chariots may have been bred in Anatolia, and the princesses of distant lands, sent as brides, carried their own gods and traditions into foreign courts. Through these exchanges, the world became smaller. Empires learned to coexist, even as they schemed. The tablets capture this delicate moment, a fragile peace between giants, held together by couriers and clay. But what makes the Amarna letters haunting is how abruptly this network ended. Not long after Akhenaten's death, the city of Akhetaten was abandoned. The archives were left behind, and the words of kings fell silent. By the time Tutankhamun rose to power, the great experiment of Akhenaten's city had already turned to dust. The tablets, however, did not vanish. They endured, protected by the desert's indifference. For more than 3,000 years, they slept beneath layers of sand until a group of farmers digging for fertilizer unearthed them by accident. They had no idea they were holding royal messages between empires. Today, the tablets are divided among museums in Cairo, Berlin, and London, but their collective voice remains whole. A dialogue across time that continues to echo in quiet museum halls. When you stand before one, the script still catches light in a peculiar way. The lines shimmer faintly, almost alive. You can trace the marks where the stylus pressed too hard, where a scribe hesitated, or began again. And in that moment, the gulf between you and them narrows. You realize that what lies before you isn't just history, it's communication. The same instinct that drives us to send a message, to reach across distance and uncertainty, was already alive then. These letters, for all their grandeur and ceremony, are reminders that words have always been the strongest bridge across time, and perhaps that's their true power. Not that they carried the commands of kings, but that they survived everything else. They outlived empires, gods, and dynasties. They witnessed the fall of Akhenaten's son, the burial of cities, the fading of languages, yet their meaning still stands. Their voices still rise softly from the clay, whispering to anyone willing to listen. We were here, we spoke, we tried to understand one another. And in that whisper, the world's first diplomacy becomes something more than history. It becomes human. The axe that never cut. Beneath the soil of central Germany, where mists drift like unspoken memories across quiet hills, a glimmer once surfaced. A small bronze axe, too delicate to chop wood, too finely made for battle. It was an object meant not for use, but for meaning. The Nebra miniature axe, an artifact that could fit in the palm of your hand, yet holds within it the breath of an age when the sky was worshipped, when metal was still a miracle, and when people believed objects could speak to the gods. Imagine for a moment, a land before Germany was Germany, forests without boundaries, rivers without bridges, nights so dark that the Milky Way itself looked like a spilled trail of grain across the heavens. In those woods, people of the Bronze Age tended fires and looked up, wondering what forces shaped their fate. The axe, though tiny, was born of that wondering. It was shaped not to fell trees, but to mark power, to echo the world's first conversations between humans and divinity. The story begins near the town of Nebra, a name now bound forever to one of archaeology's most mysterious finds, the Nebra sky disk. But before the disk, before anyone spoke of golden suns and crescent moons on bronze, there were smaller offerings, sacred trinkets cast into the ground, given to the earth in exchange for favor. The miniature axe was one of them, and though its blade never touched bark or bone, its edge may have cut a path between mortals and the unseen. Close your eyes and picture the craftsman. He sits by the hearth, molten bronze cooling in a clay mold. The air smells of charcoal and earth. Outside, wind moves through pine branches, whispering across a world untouched by wheels or walls. The craftsman waits. He knows this is not a tool. It is a promise. Bronze is new in this world, a fusion of copper and tin, each drawn from distant places, carried over mountains, traded through hands that never met the sea. To make bronze is to master a kind of alchemy, and to make a miniature axe of bronze, that is to claim the favor of spirits older than memory. The mold cracks open, revealing the gleam of greenish metal. The craftsman tilts it toward the firelight. He sees not a weapon, but a reflection of the moon's curved edge, of lightning's split path, of the delicate balance between power and restraint. It is small, smaller than a man's thumb, yet when he holds it, it feels weighty with intent. He polishes it, traces a spiral with his fingertip along the haft, and then sets it aside. This little axe, this token of a world learning its first metallurgy, will not cut a single branch. It will travel elsewhere, into the ritual heart of Bronze Age Europe. Days pass. A gathering forms at the edge of a clearing. Men and women stand in a half circle as smoke drifts upward from a smoldering pit. In the pit are other offerings, beads, pins, fragments of pottery, all shimmering faintly beneath the haze. The priest, if such a title even fits this time, lifts the miniature axe high. He chants something no one now can translate. His breath meets the morning mist, and then, gently, he lowers the axe into the earth. For centuries, it will stay there, sleeping. The world above it changes. Tribes migrate, wars come and go, languages are born and forgotten, iron replaces bronze. The axe remains untouched. Roots coil around it like protective hands. It watches the slow breathing of time. Centuries later, a farmer digging near Nebra will find something else first. The sky disk, a round plate of bronze and gold showing the stars. Archaeologists will marvel at it, at how ancient people mapped the heavens, and then they will find, not far from it, the small axe, overlooked by most, but carrying its own message. Because the Nebra sky disk may have shown the sky, but the miniature axe shows the human hand reaching for it. If you listen closely, you might imagine that hand again, rough with labor, trembling with belief. What did he think as he lowered it into the ground? Was it fear? Gratitude? Hope for rain? Or a child's recovery? We cannot know. But the axe remembers. Over time, more miniature axes would appear in European soil, scattered from Scandinavia to Hungary. Each one slightly different, yet bound by the same strangeness. They were made to look like tools of work and war, yet they were too small to serve either purpose. They were symbols, perhaps of rank, perhaps of prayers, perhaps of something even more abstract, the connection between creation and the cosmos. The Nebra axe, in particular, is a whisper of that larger conversation. It tells us that these early metallurgists didn't see bronze merely as metal. They saw it as alive. To melt ore was to breathe life into stone. To cast it into a shape was to give that life a form. And to bury it? That was to return it to the earth with meaning, an offering of what humanity could create, given back to the soil from which it came. The axe is not ornate. There are no jewels, no inscriptions. Its simplicity is part of its beauty and its mystery, because simplicity, in the ancient world, often meant sacredness, a thing so pure in design that no extra mark was needed. Even now it holds the same calm as it did then, a small curve of bronze resting silently in a glass case, its dull green patina soft under museum lights. Visitors pass by, sometimes without noticing it. They are drawn instead to the sky disk beside it, bright and famous. But if you stop, if you linger before the tiny axe and look closely, it almost seems to hum, not with sound, but with a presence. Perhaps it hums with the echoes of its making, the furnace crackling, the wind outside the hut, the steady hands of the smith. Perhaps it hums with the knowledge that even small things, things that never cut, can hold entire worlds inside them. In its stillness, the axe teaches a quiet lesson. Power does not always lie in size, or force, or use. Sometimes it lies in intention, in the moment someone decides to create something simply to mean something. And so, as night falls again over Nebra, and the forests sway like they did thousands of years ago, you might imagine the earth shifting slightly in its sleep. Because somewhere below, the ground still remembers all it was given. The gold discs, the bronze blades, the miniature axe that never cut. But its story is not finished. In the next chapter we'll follow how this humble artifact connected Bronze Age Europe, how miniature axes were used as symbols of trade, power, and even celestial faith, and how this small object became a key to understanding the great invisible web of ancient civilization. The Nebra miniature axe rests quietly beneath glass today, its edges dulled by the passage of more than 3,000 years. But in its time, that little blade was part of something vast, a network of minds and movements stretching across Bronze Age Europe, connecting people who never knew each other's names, yet shared the same awe for metal and meaning. The Bronze Age was, above all, an age of connection. Tin from Cornwall, copper from the Alps, gold from the rivers of the Carpathians. All these metals passed through countless hands. Miners, traders, craftsmen, and priests carried along trails that wound through forests and mountains, across rivers and coasts, and with them ideas traveled too, ideas of gods, of symbols, of objects that were more than objects. The miniature axe was one of those ideas. It appeared wherever people worked metal and looked to the heavens, in graves, in hoards, in sacred bogs where water met earth. Tiny axes were left as gifts, or messages, or markers of faith. Archaeologists call them votive offerings, but to the people who placed them, they may have been something much more intimate, perhaps a sign of gratitude after a safe harvest, perhaps a silent word between the living and the dead, perhaps a way to hold the promise of strength, in a size that fit gently in the palm of a trembling hand. Imagine the night they buried one. A small group gathers by firelight, far from the village. The air smells of damp moss and smoke. Someone carries a small woven basket lined with soft animal fur. Inside it, the miniature axe gleams faintly, the fire reflected along its smooth, curved edge. A young boy holds it for a moment before it's lowered into the ground. He asks what it's for. The elder doesn't answer. He only smiles and says, "So that the earth remembers us kindly." It is an act both humble and immense, a whisper into the soil, trusting that the earth itself will keep the story. Over time, such acts began to form patterns. Across Europe, hundreds of small axes appear in the archaeological record, each slightly different in shape, but nearly identical in spirit. Some are made of bronze, others of gold. Some are smooth, others engraved with faint spirals or suns. Some were worn on necklaces, perhaps as symbols of power or divine favor. They may have represented thunder gods, early echoes of deities like Thor or Perun, whose hammers and axes commanded storms. It is no coincidence that so many ancient gods were smiths, or wielders of metal. To shape bronze was to command the elements, to make fire and stone yield something new. The smith was both craftsman and sorcerer, and in his hands even a miniature weapon could carry the spark of creation. In Nibra, archaeologists have long wondered why this small axe was placed near the sky disk, that round bronze plate etched with gold suns and stars. Perhaps the two were part of the same ritual, one for the heavens, one for the earth. Together, they represent a balance, the axe forged from the ground, the disk reflecting the sky. Matter and meaning, earth and cosmos, two offerings bound by belief. If you listen carefully, you can almost feel that ancient alignment, the moment when people saw no division between heaven and soil, between work and worship. Everything was connected. The same fire that melted metal was the same fire that warmed the stars in their myths. The Nibra axe then becomes more than an artifact. It becomes a key, a quiet reminder that civilization did not begin with cities or kings, but with shared wonder. People who looked up at the same sky, melted the same metals, and buried the same symbols, and that is what makes this axe so haunting. It was made by someone who lived without writing, without maps, without the histories we cling to, yet across thousands of years, their silent act still speaks, not in words, but in shape, not in noise, but in patience. The more we study it, the more it teaches about how belief can be cast into metal, and how meaning can outlast even language. Today, visitors lean close to the museum glass. They whisper, as if afraid to wake it, and in a way, the axe listens, not to worship, but to curiosity. The same curiosity that first made it possible. The same quiet wondering that led a Bronze Age craftsman to melt his metal and dream that even a small thing could touch eternity. Perhaps that's what all artifacts truly are, dreams that survived their dreamers, moments of meaning, solidified in matter. So when you next see a museum case, don't just look for what's grand or golden, look for what's small. The Nebra miniature axe teaches that mystery does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, softly, from the shadows of the past. And in that whisper is a truth older than history, that even the smallest creation can hold the weight of belief, and that some blades, though they never cut, still shape the world. The blade that guarded kings. The blade that guarded kings, discovered in the royal cemetery of Ur, sits silently through time, a relic of a civilization that rose along the banks of the Euphrates thousands of years ago. A blade not forged for the chaos of battle, but for the stillness of eternity. Its bronze edge dulled now by the patient hand of centuries, yet once honed to perfection, crafted by artisans who understood that their work would speak long after they were gone. A dagger, small in size, yet monumental in significance, adorned with gold and lapis lazuli, the deep blue stone imported from distant lands. Its veins shining like fragments of night sky pressed into the hand of a king whose name is lost to memory, a sentinel for the afterlife, placed carefully beside rulers to accompany them in the shadowed corridors of Kor, the underworld, where ancient Sumerians believed their kings would continue to need protection. And in this tiny but profoundly significant object, we see the devotion, artistry, and spiritual belief of a people who intertwined life, death, and the divine into objects as unassuming as a dagger, yet as powerful as the empire itself. The royal cemetery of Ur was not simply a burial ground, but a carefully curated landscape of death and memory, where kings, queens, attendants, soldiers, musicians, and treasures were interred together, the arrangement itself a reflection of order and cosmic understanding. The dagger lying near the skeletal remains of a guardian who had lain in silence for millennia, the bronze tinged with green, the gold worn smooth, the lapis reflecting faint glimmers of what might have been candlelight or sunlight long ago. The dagger's existence is a testimony to the importance of guardianship and continuity, for even in death, the king required protection, and the blade symbolized that eternal watch. The artisans who made this dagger worked in a world of fire and shadow, melting copper and tin to create bronze, hammering, polishing, inlaying gold, pressing lapis into grooves, and with each strike of the hammer, with each careful press of stone into metal, they were performing a ritual, crafting not only an object but a covenant, an unspoken promise that the ruler would never be alone in the afterlife. The tomb in which the dagger was found, like many in Ura, was designed with layers of brick, lined with precious materials, a pit that served as a threshold between the living and the dead, and into this sacred space the dagger was placed, its edge pointing not toward violence but toward eternity. And when archaeologists unearthed it centuries later, the silence of the tomb was profound, the air still, and the dagger, though no longer gleaming as it once had, retained its purpose. It remained a silent guardian, a witness to the rituals, the prayers, the fear, and hope of the Sumerians. One can almost imagine the funeral procession, the temple drums marking the passage of a king into the underworld, women singing low hymns, the smell of burning cedar and incense lingering in the cool desert air, attendants lowering the coffin, treasures arranged meticulously, and finally the dagger, placed by a hand that understood its sacred duty, a weapon that would never need to fight, only to remain vigilant. The materials of the dagger speak of connections across continents, of trade and distance, gold from riverbeds, lapis from the mountains, copper and tin from afar, all converging in one artifact, a point where geography and devotion intersect, and as we gaze upon it now in the modern museum, the blade reflects the artificial lights of glass and air conditioning, far from the lamplight of yet it carries the weight of history, of human intention and care, its small size belying its monumental significance. A piece of bronze that embodies the understanding that even rulers, even kings were mortal, yet their memory could be preserved through objects that outlast empires. The dagger also invites reflection on the artisans whose hands shaped it, their names lost but their skill immortalized in the bronze, gold and lapis, imagining them at work, in rooms warmed by furnace and smoke, their lives focused on crafting something that would witness centuries of silence, that would lie beside a dead king and stand as a guardian against oblivion. Every curve of the handle, every smoothed edge, every carefully placed gem is testimony to that devotion. The dagger's placement beside a body is itself a message, a silent communication across time, a reminder that even in the absence of life, protection, care, and reverence persisted, and it is in that persistence that we find both beauty and meaning. The blade has endured looters, floods, wars, and centuries of neglect, yet it remains, a fragment of a civilization that influenced the world in law, writing, and architecture. Its bronze edge, though tarnished, still evokes awe, its lapis glinting as it might have under lamplight, 4,000 years ago, when a guardian's hand rested upon it, ensuring that the king's passage to the afterlife was safe. When archaeologists in the 1920s led by Sir Leonard Woolley excavated they discovered not only wealth but the meticulous planning of death, every object intentionally positioned, every burial a statement of faith, and in the midst of it, the dagger became a symbol, not of violence, but of eternal vigilance, a quiet protector in a world where even kings could not escape mortality. The small artifact carries a message to us even now, a bridge across millennia, a reminder that what we create can outlast our lives, that devotion, care, and intention can preserve memory beyond the reach of time, that bronze and gold and stone can whisper across ages, and the blade that guarded kings whispers still, telling of kings and guardians, of artisans and rituals, of life and death entwined in a single enduring object. In the hush of the museum halls, visitors see more than metal and stone. They see faith, protection, the weight of history held in a hand-sized object, a blade that never cuts, yet continues to guard, reminding us that even in silence there is purpose, even in stillness there is vigilance, and through it all, the dagger bridges past and present, the living and the dead, reminding us that what is made with care, what is placed with intention, has the power to endure, to witness, to tell stories that otherwise might have been lost to the dust of time. The blade is a sentinel, a fragment of civilization, a spark of human devotion, and though the kings it once guarded have returned to dust, their stories, their lives, and the world they inhabited are preserved in this singular object, and as we stand today in front of its display, we are reminded that human history is not only written in texts or monuments, but in small, exquisite objects, silent but profound, a blade that continues its watch quietly, patiently, eternally, reminding all who see it that in care and faith, in the things we leave behind, memory can survive, and through objects like the Royal Cemetery dagger, the echoes of kings and guardians and craftsmen resonate across time, teaching us that even the smallest artifact, handled with devotion, can carry the weight of entire civilizations, and that in the quiet, in the stillness of bronze and lapis and gold, the past speaks to the present, telling us that the stories of human life, of reverence and protection, endure when we listen closely to the whispers of history, and the blade that guarded kings endures, as it always has, a sentinel across the centuries, a testament to human ingenuity, belief, and the eternal desire to protect and remember. As we linger in the quiet presence of the Royal Cemetery dagger, we imagine the world it came from, a world where rivers carried life and trade, where cities like thrived with temples, marketplaces, and the rhythm of daily rituals. And in that world, the dagger remained steadfast, a companion to those who had passed, a silent observer of eternity. It reminds us that even in the hush of burial, the living sought to provide for the dead, ensuring their journeys continued safely beyond the edge of life, that artisans understood their creations were more than tools, more than objects. They were vessels of care, guardians of memory, and bearers of belief. Close your eyes, and picture the quiet hands of the craftsman shaping bronze with fire and hammer, polishing gold, pressing lapis into intricate designs, every motion deliberate, every detail purposeful, and feel the weight of centuries press softly around the dagger as it rests beside a long-departed king. The air filled with incense and ceremony, the flicker of torchlight casting shadows across the walls of the tomb, a world suspended between life and the eternal. Imagine the soft rustle of ceremonial robes, the murmured prayers of attendants, and the deep understanding that even in death, protection was essential, that the king's safety was entrusted not to armies or fortresses, but to objects like this, simple yet profound, bronze, gold, and stone, imbued with devotion. In the stillness of the museum today, as you look upon it through glass, its silent vigilance transcends time, whispering to anyone who will listen, teaching us about the care and reverence of a civilization that flourished millennia ago, about human desire to leave something lasting, to bridge the gap between the living and the departed, between the fleeting present and the eternal past. And as you breathe slowly, letting these thoughts drift gently, let the dagger story remind you that history is not only in monuments or texts but in small, quiet objects, each holding centuries of belief, devotion, and memory, carrying the weight of kings, guardians, and the hands that crafted them, and that through these objects the past remains present, quietly guiding us to understand the care, the artistry, and the eternal watchfulness that humans have always strived to leave behind. A legacy as enduring as bronze, as luminous as gold, as deep as lapis. The blade that guarded kings standing still, vigilant, and eternal, its story flowing softly into ours, bridging millennia in silence, in devotion, in the gentle passage of time. The treasure that time couldn't hide. Imagine a misty morning along the winding rivers and rolling hills of ancient Gaul, where the tribes of the Celts walked with the quiet dignity of a people who knew the earth beneath them and the sky above them as intimately as the lines on their palms. The wind rustled through the tall grasses and the forest edges, carrying the scent of damp soil and the distant call of birds. And somewhere beneath this living landscape lay treasures that would one day defy the understanding of future generations. Among these treasures was the gold of Tolosa, a hoard so magnificent, so intricately wrought, that even now, thousands of years later, it commands attention, inspiring both awe and a subtle contemplative unease, as though the gold itself carries echoes of its past, whispers of the hands that crafted it, and the ceremonies in which it was used. Imagine the golden sheen reflecting torchlight in a hidden chamber, the glimmer dancing across intricate Celtic patterns, spirals, knotwork, and symbols, whose meanings might forever remain just out of reach, yet whose power resonates across time. Each piece, each delicate curve of a torque, each small nugget, each coin tells a story, not only of wealth but of ritual, of belief, of a civilization whose connection to nature, to the divine, and to the very essence of human community was woven into every artifact they left behind. Now consider the hands that hid this treasure, carefully, deliberately, knowing that some future world might stumble upon it, not to plunder casually, but to marvel at what had been lost and preserved. What thoughts must have accompanied the concealment? Reverence, fear, hope, an understanding that objects of gold were more than currency, they were conduits of identity, power, and sacredness. Feel the weight of those centuries pressing gently on your mind as you imagine the Celts moving silently through shadowed corridors or forested valleys, placing torques and coins, each meticulously arranged, knowing that these objects carried not just material value, but the very essence of their culture. As the centuries passed, kingdoms rose and fell, the land changed hands countless times, and yet the treasure remained, hidden beneath soil and stone, untouched by those who might have discovered it accidentally. Its presence a quiet testimony to human ingenuity and the desire to protect what we value most, the intangible as much as the tangible. Picture modern archaeologists, trowels and brushes in hand, uncovering fragments of history, each discovery sending ripples of curiosity and wonder through those who touch it, piecing together the narrative of a people who vanished into legend, leaving only echoes in gold and memory. Consider the ceremonies that might have accompanied these treasures, the dances, the chants, the offerings to deities of land, sky, and water, the invocations to forces beyond the human eye. Each piece of gold is more than metal. It is a reflection of time, of human aspiration, of a civilization's dialogue with the cosmos. As you breathe slowly, imagine the gold hoard lying silently beneath the earth, absorbing centuries of soil, rain, and sun, storing the energy of generations, ready to reveal itself only when the world was prepared to listen, to witness the enduring presence of a culture that understood both beauty and secrecy. And now, when you envision the gold of Tolosa emerging into the light of the modern age, carefully excavated, catalogued, studied. You can feel the bridge between past and present, the continuity of human curiosity, and the reverence that such discoveries inspire. The Celtic designs, bold yet intricate, speak of artisans whose skills rival the finest of any era, whose hands could transform raw metal into objects imbued with meaning, whose vision transcended immediate utility to touch something eternal. As your mind wanders through the quiet halls of history, hear the subtle hum of reverence that accompanies gold untouched by human greed, the silent stories of warriors, priests, and craftsmen, all converging in a single horde that survived time, waiting to speak. Let the imagined flicker of torchlight illuminate every curve, every spiral, every torque and coin, feeling the cold smoothness of metal against skin as you ponder the journeys these objects have taken from molten beginnings to ceremonial use, from hidden cache to archaeological discovery, each step a testament to human care, skill, and desire for legacy. Reflect on the paradox of gold, precious, unyielding, and yet so easily hidden, a medium through which humanity converses with eternity. Picture the rivers of southern Gaul, winding past ancient settlements, carrying whispers of the past, as the treasure remained undisturbed beneath roots and soil, absorbing the passage of seasons, the quiet weight of centuries. The discovery of Tolosa's gold is not merely a tale of wealth, it is an intimate dialogue with human history, an invitation to understand the Celts' worldview, their belief systems, and their intricate artistry, preserved against all odds. As your thoughts drift deeper, imagine each artifact in the hoard holding its own small universe, stories of battles, of ceremonial rites, of connections to the divine and natural world, stories that continue to resonate silently through time, awaiting a patient mind to perceive them. Feel the stillness of the underground cache, the invisible tension in the air as history sleeps, the patience of the earth itself in guarding these relics, and the wonder of their eventual emergence into human consciousness. Let this sense of connection expand, imagining the hands of those long gone, shaping gold with care, the glimmer of sunlight reflecting off hammered surfaces, the quiet sound of gold moving in velvet-lined chests, all forming a bridge across millennia, and in the gentle awareness of this past, recognize the continuity of human desire to create, to protect, to leave a trace that outlasts the fleeting span of a single life. As you continue to breathe slowly and calmly, let the gold of Tolosa remind you of the vast sweep of time, the enduring nature of human artistry and reverence, the hidden treasures that await discovery in every corner of the world, and the quiet majesty of civilizations that spoke through the objects they left behind. Through this meditation on history, allow yourself to drift peacefully, imagining every coin, torque, and ornament as a whisper from the past, inviting reflection, awe, and a serene contemplation of the endless dance between humanity and time itself, a dance recorded in gold, in silence, and in the stories that survive only because someone somewhere chose to hide them, and protect them, and believe in their eternal significance. As the golden hoard of Tolosa lay buried beneath the earth for centuries, imagine the landscape above it changing with the passage of time. Generations of Celtic tribes lived and died, their villages rising and falling like the ebb and flow of a distant tide. The hoard remained untouched, a silent sentinel beneath the soil, absorbing the slow rhythm of seasons, the rustle of leaves, the patter of rain, the cold kiss of snow, and the warm embrace of sunlight filtering through centuries of sediment. Picture the intricate torques, each piece of gold reflecting the labor of skilled artisans who spent months, perhaps years, perfecting every twist and curve. These torques were not mere jewelry, they were symbols of rank, of spiritual connection, of a culture's intimate dialogue with the forces that governed both the natural and the supernatural world. Each spiral, each knot, each hammered facet spoke of rituals long forgotten, chants lost to time, and the hands of masters whose understanding of metal transcended simple craft. Imagine the coins, small yet weighty with purpose, minted in patterns that were both artistic and functional, tracing the interconnected trade networks of the Celts and their neighbors. Each coin was a story, a map of commerce, alliances and power, a testimony to a civilization that balanced the tangible and intangible, the material and spiritual, with a sophistication that modern eyes can scarcely comprehend. Now, visualize the hoard being concealed deliberately in a hidden chamber, or deep within a hollowed rock, its presence known only to a select few. The act of hiding the gold was itself a ritual, an acknowledgement of its sacredness, a recognition that wealth without stewardship could bring ruin. Those who hid the treasure may have been priests, chieftains or guardians of the tribe, who understood that gold was not merely a medium of exchange, but a vessel of power, of belief, and of legacy. With the passage of centuries, the Celts themselves vanished from history, assimilated into new empires, or driven from their lands, yet the treasure remained, waiting patiently for rediscovery. When modern archaeologists eventually unearthed the hoard, they were met with a silence that spoke volumes, a connection to the past so direct that it could almost be felt in the pulse of the earth beneath their feet. The gold of Tolosa was more than a collection of artifacts, It was a dialogue across time, a conversation between those who lived millennia ago and those who now seek to understand them. Each torque, each coin, each delicate ornament was a messenger, carrying the thoughts, fears, and beliefs of a people whose names we may never know, yet whose essence survives in the gleam of gold, in the subtle patterns etched by human hands, and in the awe that stirs in anyone who beholds them. Imagine the ceremonies that might have accompanied these objects, the chants resonating through sacred groves, the rhythmic stamping of feet on the earth, the lighting of torches, and the invocation of spirits, ancestors, and deities. The gold was not just hidden for protection, but consecrated, infused with meaning, reverence, and perhaps a touch of fear. Even as empires rose and fell around it, the treasure remained untouched, a testament to the enduring respect humans can hold for the objects that embody their highest ideals. Picture the hoard being discovered at last, not through accident, but through the patient work of archaeologists, historians, and scholars, each piece carefully unearthed, catalogued, and studied. Imagine the wonder of holding a torque that had not seen daylight for centuries, feeling the weight of history and human effort concentrated in a single artifact. Think of the patterns in the gold, twisting and turning in ways that are both familiar and alien, symbols whose meanings may never be fully deciphered, yet whose beauty transcends time. Now envision the broader impact. How the discovery of the gold of Tolosa reshaped our understanding of Celtic culture, their artistry, their social structures, and their spiritual beliefs. It illuminated a world previously only glimpsed through fragmented texts and distant chronicles, breathing life into the shadows of history. Allow yourself to wander further into imagination, picturing each item as a fragment of stories, of chieftains asserting authority, of communities gathering to honor the divine, of craftspeople perfecting their techniques over years, perhaps decades. Consider the paradox of time. The treasure was hidden to preserve it, yet it also served as a bridge, connecting the ancient Celts to the modern world in a conversation spanning thousands of years. As you picture the hoard now on display in museums, under careful lighting and observation, imagine the silent voice of the gold, speaking not in words, but in resonance, in the way light glints off a torque, in the subtle curves of a coin, in the craftsmanship that defies centuries. The gold of Tolosa challenges us to reflect on our own understanding of value, devotion, and legacy, reminding us that material wealth alone is fleeting, but the cultural, spiritual, and artistic essence embedded within these objects can transcend time. Let your mind drift into the ceremonial life of the Celts, envisioning sacred groves, sacred rivers, and ritual fires, where gold torques and coins were more than possessions, they were conduits for blessings, protection, and the continuity of culture. Each artifact is a fragment of a universe, capturing the rhythm of life in the Celtic world, the flow of commerce and trade, the quiet reverence for ancestors and the divine. Now feel the weight of centuries as you picture the hoard lying hidden, untouched, absorbing the passage of time, until the moment of rediscovery bridges past and present. Let the awe of connection wash over you, the realization that human hands shaped, hid, and protected these treasures with intent, care, and reverence. In the stillness of imagination, hear the echoes of those ancient rituals, the murmur of chants, the quiet footsteps of those who safeguarded the gold. Each artifact becomes a teacher, revealing not only history, but human aspiration, patience, and devotion. The gold of Tolosa is a story of preservation against the odds, of artistry immortalized in metal, of a culture whose voice speaks across millennia, inviting us to witness, reflect, and marvel. As you allow your mind to rest on these images, feel the continuity of human experience, the same hands that hid and cherished the gold centuries ago, reaching forward through time to touch the modern observer, to remind us of the beauty, mystery, and reverence inherent in the human spirit. The treasure is not merely an object, but a meditation on civilization, the passage of time, and the enduring desire to leave a mark that outlasts a single lifetime. Let this awareness settle gently, imagining the glittering torques, the gleaming coins, and the hidden hoard, connecting past and present in a silent, eternal conversation. Finally, as your thoughts drift in the quiet of reflection, understand that the gold of Tolosa remains not only a testament to the Celts but also to humanity itself, to our capacity for creativity, secrecy, devotion, and reverence for what we hold most sacred, a timeless bridge that invites the curious to witness, wonder, and carry its story forward, evermore. The stars that charted eternity. High above the desert sands of Egypt, in a quiet, ancient temple devoted to Hathor, the goddess of joy, love, and the celestial sky, a story was carved into stone. The Dendera zodiac, a bas-relief hidden for centuries, awaited discovery, a silent witness to the human desire to understand the heavens. Its circular shape, meticulously etched into the ceiling of the Temple of Dendera, captured the stars, planets, and constellations as they were seen thousands of years ago. But it did more than merely record positions of heavenly bodies. It connected the heavens to the rituals of human life, to the cycles of planting and harvest, to the reigns of pharaohs and the movements of time itself. The stone seemed to breathe slowly with the rhythm of the universe, each carving a whisper, each symbol a gentle echo of the night sky. Imagine yourself stepping into that temple long ago, before the world had fully mapped its stars, before telescopes had given humans their first distant glimpses of galaxies beyond our own, when the heavens were a mysterious ocean above, guiding and foretelling the lives of those below. The ancient Egyptians, whose devotion to the stars was interwoven with their understanding of life and death, believed that the movements of celestial bodies were reflections of divine will. In the circular expanse of the Dendera zodiac, one can see familiar constellations, though arranged in ways that seem foreign to modern eyes. Taurus, Leo, Orion, and Pisces take their places, their positions not arbitrary, but reflecting the sky as it appeared in a particular era, perhaps around 50 BCE, when the temple itself was completed during the reign of Cleopatra VII. Each figure is a silent storyteller, a keeper of knowledge passed through generations, carved by artisans who understood the significance of their work, not only for their own time, but for the millennia to come. The zodiac is more than art. It is a map, a calendar, a spiritual compass. The outer ring depicts the 12 signs, yet the center draws the gaze, with a celestial vault that merges sun, moon, and planets in a delicate, interlocking pattern. Sun and moon gods, Hathor and Ra, are present, subtly reminding us that ancient Egyptians did not see the stars as distant, impersonal points of light, but as living entities with whom one could communicate through ritual, through observation, through reverence. If one were to touch the stone, to trace the carved lines with a fingertip, one might feel the careful precision of ancient hands, the labor of artisans working under the dim glow of oil lamps, the patience that only centuries of devotion can foster. The carvings were not merely for show, they were tools for navigation, for understanding seasons, for predicting floods and harvests, for timing the planting of grain, and for coordinating rituals that would honor both gods and ancestors. The temple itself was a sanctuary, built in harmony with the cycles of the heavens, and the zodiac on its ceiling was both an offering and a guide. When the French Egyptologist Émile Baurising and his team discovered the temple's ceiling in the early 20th century, the relief was lifted from obscurity, revealing a sophisticated understanding of astronomy that rivaled knowledge later attributed to the Greeks and Romans. But the carvings are more than scientific, they are profoundly human. Each celestial figure reflects the longing to find meaning in the vast, silent expanse of night. They whisper of humans lying awake beneath the stars, tracking their patterns, mapping them onto the motions of their own lives, and inscribing that understanding into stone, confident that even when their own mortal lives faded, these patterns would endure. The zodiac includes not only stars, but planets, shown with the moon, the sun, and the 5 wandering stars known to the ancients. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn each have their place, spinning in delicate harmony, reminding us that even before telescopes, humans sought to explain the movements of these wandering points of light. To gaze upon the Dendera zodiac is to witness the merging of science and spirituality, to see knowledge interwoven with art, ritual, and devotion. The crescent moons carved in delicate arcs, the star fields etched with precision, the positioning of the signs of the zodiac, all point to a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos, one that guided the lives of priests and pharaohs alike. One can imagine the priests ascending steps within the temple, torches flickering, chanting prayers, observing the night sky through open doorways, noting how the constellations aligned with temples and tombs. The zodiac served as both a tool and a teaching device, conveying lessons about celestial patterns, seasonal cycles, and the rhythm of life itself. Each figure carved into stone is not static. It represents emotion, a journey across the sky, a story that repeats itself in endless cycles. Imagine lying beneath the ancient ceiling, the weight of history above you, the faint scent of incense curling around your senses, hearing the faint echoes of chants as you contemplate the stars. The Dendera zodiac is timeless, yet it also captures a moment, a specific snapshot of the heavens as seen by the people who lived along the Nile thousands of years ago. The carvings remind us that humans have always looked upward, seeking patterns, seeking guidance, seeking connection. There is the figure of a bull, Taurus, whose presence marks the passage of seasons and the agricultural calendar. The lion of Leo signifies the height of summer, the fullness of warmth, and the abundance of life. Orion, the mighty hunter, watches over the land as he did in the stories told by the Egyptians, stories that blend myth and observation, deity and human, night sky and desert earth. The center of the zodiac, with its celestial circle, offers a sense of infinite continuity. Sun and moon, planets and stars, revolve in their eternal paths, reminding us of the unchanging rhythms of the cosmos. The relief is a meditation on time itself, on cycles that far exceed human lifespans, yet intimately affect daily existence. Ancient Egyptians believed that observing these movements could align them with divine will, guiding decisions about everything from ritual offerings to the timing of agricultural work. The carvings carry knowledge, but they also carry mystery. Despite centuries of study, some questions remain unanswered. Why are certain constellations emphasized over others? How precisely did they track planetary motions without modern instruments? The zodiac hints at knowledge perhaps lost. Techniques passed down orally, precise observations made over generations, then carved into stone for eternity. As the sun moves across the sky outside the temple, the relief is bathed in soft, golden light, emphasizing certain carvings at different times of day, perhaps intentionally aligned to mark solstices or equinoxes, a practice that shows the interweaving of astronomy, architecture, and religious ritual. When the temple is empty, with no human presence to witness it, the zodiac continues to tell its story silently. It is a whisper of the past, a reminder that knowledge and curiosity are timeless, that the human desire to map the cosmos, to understand one's place within it, transcends eras and empires. To study the zodiac is to enter a dialogue with ancient minds, to feel the weight of centuries, to imagine the lives of priests and scribes who watched the same stars, wondering what the heavens might reveal. The carvings, though thousands of years old, are surprisingly relatable. They speak to the same curiosity that drives us today. Why are the stars arranged as they are? What stories can they tell? How can their positions guide our actions, our understanding of the world, our spiritual lives? Each star, each line, each curve on the Dendera zodiac is a bridge across time, connecting modern observers with those long past, reminding us that some questions remain eternal, and some knowledge is meant to be contemplated quietly, over the span of human life and imagination. As you visualize the temple in your mind, as your thoughts drift over the carvings of the zodiac, you can imagine the rhythmic chanting of priests, the flickering torchlight illuminating stone, the way the carvings might have glowed with shadows and dust. You can feel the connection between earth and sky, between human life and celestial cycles. The zodiac is not merely an artifact, it is a meditation, a reflection, a dream carved into stone. To gaze upon it is to acknowledge the long continuum of human curiosity, the unbroken desire to understand and to record the movements of the heavens, to leave something lasting for those who would come after. The stars have been silent for millennia, but here, in the stone of Dendera, they speak. They remind us of the humans who loved them, who charted them, who integrated them into their daily lives and spiritual practices. They remind us that the universe is both vast and intimate, that cycles of birth, growth, death, and renewal are mirrored in the heavens. The Dendera zodiac is a key to that ancient understanding, a preserved testament to the intelligence, observation, and devotion of people who lived along the Nile long before modern science. To contemplate it is to contemplate time itself, the vastness of space, and the enduring power of human wonder. It whispers to us, gently, patiently, as we trace the carvings with our mind's eye, connecting dots of knowledge across millennia, feeling the continuity of human curiosity, and understanding that some mysteries are meant to be explored, slowly, quietly, with reverence. The relief may be silent, but it speaks volumes about humanity's need to understand the cosmos, to find meaning in the night sky, to align human life with celestial rhythms. It is a record, a meditation, and a bridge across time, inviting us to enter a space of quiet reflection, to follow the cycles of the stars, and to recognize that the universe has always been both a guide and a mystery. The Dendera zodiac remains one of the most extraordinary astronomical artifacts ever discovered, and even now, standing in the temple, or studying its images from afar, we are drawn into the same contemplation that inspired the ancient artisans. As we end our journey across its carved stars, its planets, its sacred animals and symbols, we can feel a quiet connection with those who first gazed upward in awe, whose lives were guided by patterns of light in the sky. The stars that charted eternity continue to speak, inviting anyone willing to look upward and to wonder, to listen patiently, and to imagine the infinite story that stretches across both sky and stone, across centuries of human curiosity and devotion. In this quiet meditation, one finds not only knowledge, but a soothing sense of continuity, a gentle reminder that even as centuries pass, the stars remain, and human wonder endures. The gates that guarded empires, the Balawat gates, stand today not as they were first constructed, but their fragments tell a story more vivid than any single intact structure could. Carved over 2,700 years ago, during the height of the Assyrian Empire, these monumental bronze gates were more than entrances to palaces. They were declarations of power, artistry, and history cast in metal and timber. Imagine standing before them as a visitor to the city of Balawat, a city alive with activity, its streets echoing with merchants, soldiers, and priests moving through their daily routines, the gates looming above like sentinels of both security and splendor. Each panel of the gates is a masterful composition, telling tales of battles, hunts, rituals, and royal decrees, a continuous narrative that stretches across the bronze in a rhythm almost cinematic in its flow. Warriors in Assyrian armor are captured mid-charge, their chariots striking through the dust of conquered lands, lions and wild beasts falling before the might of organized armies. The level of detail is astonishing, the texture of fur, the folds in garments, the expressions on faces, all rendered with a precision that conveys both motion and emotion. This was propaganda and history entwined, a visual chronicle designed to awe visitors, intimidate enemies, and glorify the king who commissioned the gates. King Shalmaneser III is most often associated with these gates, and his campaigns against neighboring kingdoms are immortalized in bronze. The gates do not merely show victories, they show strategy, organization, and the very machinery of empire. Siege engines, soldiers advancing in formation, and detailed depictions of tributary peoples delivering gifts illustrate the complexities of ancient diplomacy and conquest. Walking along the panels, one can almost hear the rhythm of battle drums and the clatter of chariots. Every scene is alive, a frozen motion that yet speaks across millennia. Beyond the depictions of war, the gates also celebrate the wealth and ritual life of Assyria. Processions of priests, offerings to gods, and sacred ceremonies remind us that religion and governance were intertwined, and that kings ruled not just through military might, but through divine sanction. The gates themselves, constructed of bronze over wooden cores, reflect sunlight in a way that would have made the palace entrance shimmer, a dazzling spectacle of craftsmanship. Bronze, at the time, was a medium that required immense skill to shape, to hammer into panels thin enough to convey delicate reliefs, but strong enough to withstand the passage of thousands of feet through their portals. The gate's construction is a testament to the ingenuity of Assyrian artisans who combined engineering knowledge with artistic vision, working in a world without power tools, blueprints, or modern metallurgical techniques. Each hinge, each frame, was fitted with care, ensuring the monumental doors would swing with surprising ease, despite their size and weight. They were functional, yes, but every practical choice was overlaid with symbolism. The gates marked the boundary between the ordinary world and the king's sacred sovereign space, between the mundane and the divine. Consider the scenes of hunting lions that run along the lower panels. In Assyrian culture, hunting was not merely sport, it was a demonstration of the king's courage, strength, and divine favor. Lions were feared and revered, and to depict the king slaying them was to show mastery over chaos itself, a metaphor for his control over the empire. The hunters, bow in hand, spear raised, chariots surging forward, the praise fear rendered with astonishing empathy, all of it captured in the frozen permanence of bronze. Moving higher, panels show the king receiving tribute from vassal states. Soldiers, traders, and envoys bow, their gifts laid at his feet, reinforcing the hierarchy of power that underpinned Assyrian rule. These images speak volumes about the administration, the collection of taxes, and the projection of influence across regions that extended from Mesopotamia deep into modern-day Iran, Turkey, and Syria. Each figure is both individual and symbolic, representing real people and broader concepts of submission, loyalty, and imperial reach. The gates do not simply tell history, they command it, instructing viewers on the proper order of the world as defined by Assyria. In their original setting, the gates framed the entrance to a palace courtyard, guiding visitors into a space that was both political and ceremonial. One can imagine foreign dignitaries pausing at the bronze threshold, taking in the reliefs, and understanding in an instant the power and reach of the king. To them, these gates were a language as clear as any spoken word, a visual treaty of dominance, religion, and art. Today, fragments of the gates survive in museums, scattered across the world, yet even in pieces, they convey their original majesty. Scholars have painstakingly pieced together the narratives, and with each reconstruction, we glimpse not only the skill of Assyrian artisans, but also the mindset of a civilization that fused art, power, and ideology seamlessly. Every line etched into the bronze, every panel hammered with care, is a whisper from the past. They remind us that history was lived in intricate detail, that power was displayed as much through beauty as through force, and that artisans were crucial partners in shaping the narrative of empire. The Balawat gates are more than objects, they are storytellers, preserving centuries of human ambition, creativity, and devotion. As you imagine standing before them, hearing the clamor of an ancient city, the gates become more than bronze, they become a bridge across time, connecting our curiosity with the lives, struggles, and triumphs of those who came long before. Even now, as we study them from afar, they continue to teach us, to inspire awe, and to remind us of the enduring human desire to leave a mark upon the world that will survive generations. And so the Balawat gates endure, not only in fragments, but in imagination, in scholarship, and in the quiet fascination of anyone who stands before their story. They speak of empire, of artistry, and of a world in which human hands could shape metal to immortalize life, ambition, and legacy. Through them we glimpse the pulse of Assyria, its victories, its beliefs, and its relentless pursuit of permanence. Each detail, each scene, each hammer mark is a heartbeat of history, echoing across the centuries to touch the present, asking us to witness, to reflect, and to remember the empires that rose, fell, and left stories inscribed in bronze. As we continue to explore the Balawat Gates, imagine stepping closer to the intricacies of the reliefs, your fingers almost brushing the cool bronze, though centuries have passed since they were first hammered and carved. The gates were more than artistic marvels, they were encyclopedias of power, chronicling campaigns, rituals, and the very essence of Assyrian society. Each figure, each chariot, each animal captured in motion, tells a story not only of conquest but of life, faith, and ambition in the ancient world. Consider the panels depicting tribute, merchants and envoys carrying woven fabrics, precious metals, and exotic goods from distant lands, all meticulously rendered in bronze. These images reveal a network of trade and diplomacy that spanned vast regions, highlighting the sophistication of Assyrian administration. Beyond the political and military narratives, the gates hold deep symbolic significance. Lions, captured in mid-leap, represent chaos subdued. They are both literal and metaphorical markers of the king's strength and divine favor. Hunting scenes illustrate courage and mastery, not merely over animals but over disorder itself, a reflection of the king's role as the guarantor of cosmic and societal balance. High above these scenes, the king is depicted receiving blessings from the gods, his figure central, commanding, and framed in a way that emphasizes both his mortal authority and his sacred mandate. The gates thus speak simultaneously of human endeavor and divine sanction, intertwining the temporal with the eternal. The craftsmanship required to produce these bronze panels cannot be overstated. Artisans shaped each relief with incredible precision, using techniques that combined artistry with technical mastery. Bronze had to be melted, cast, and hammered. Wooden frames had to bear immense weight while allowing the gates to swing smoothly. Every detail was intentional. The gestures of hands, the tilt of heads, the positioning of chariots and animals, all carefully calculated to convey meaning and narrative clarity. These were not decorative objects, they were instruments of storytelling, propaganda, and awe. Walking along them one could read history, politics, and ideology as easily as reading a book, yet the medium, solid, imposing bronze ensured that the lessons were unforgettable. Think of the daily life around the gates. Soldiers marched through them at dawn, their armor clinking softly. Courtiers carried messages, diplomats negotiated, and priests conducted rituals. The gates bore witness to all of it, silently observing the rhythms of empire. They marked boundaries, protected spaces, and announced to all who passed through that they entered a realm where law, religion, and power converged. Even in silence, the gates communicated a clear message. Here resided order, authority, and permanence. Today, as fragments of the Balawat gates are studied in museums around the world, they continue to captivate. Scholars trace the movements of figures, decipher the sequence of panels, and attempt to reconstruct the life of a city that flourished thousands of years ago. Visitors stare at the bronze and are transported. They see armies advance, animals hunted, gifts exchanged, and the king in his full majesty. Each fragment, each hammer mark, each etched detail is a dialogue across time, inviting us to witness, to imagine, and to understand. The gates are a testament not only to Assyrian ambition, but to the enduring power of art to convey meaning beyond language and beyond generations. In contemplating the Balawat gates, we are reminded of the universality of human desire, to record, to communicate, and to leave a legacy. These gates were designed to endure, to tell stories long after the empire had faded, and in doing so, they succeeded spectacularly. They survived wars, earthquakes, and the passage of centuries, allowing us today to step into the world of Assyria, to feel its pulse, and to understand its priorities. They are in every sense bridges across time, linking the ambitions, fears, and triumphs of the past to the curiosity and wonder of the present. As we step back and take in the entirety of the gates, it becomes clear that they were more than structures, they were living narratives in bronze. They teach us about power and artistry, about devotion and diplomacy, about conquest and ritual. They show us that even in a world without photographs or digital records, humans found ways to preserve memory, to tell stories, and to project authority in ways that could endure millennia. The Balawat gates whisper to us still, inviting reflection on what it means to rule, to create, and to leave a mark upon history that will resonate long after we ourselves are gone. In their quiet resilience, in their frozen action, in their intricate detail, the gates remain timeless. They remind us that history is not just dates and events, it is human expression, ambition, and artistry captured in forms that survive beyond the lifespans of those who created them. The Balawat gates are not merely artifacts, they are a window into the heart of an empire, a lens through which we can glimpse the values, fears, and aspirations of a civilization long vanished but still speaking to us through bronze, wood, and imagination. And so, as you imagine the gates in all their original grandeur, swinging open to reveal the vibrant life of Balawat, know that you are participating in a dialogue with the past. The warriors, priests, and kings depicted in bronze reach across time to meet your gaze, and in that connection, the Balawat gates continue their silent, eternal guard over stories of power, beauty, and human endeavor. Through them, we feel the pulse of a vanished world and are reminded that even in fragments, history can speak with astonishing clarity, teaching, inspiring, and captivating all who are willing to listen. Thank you for exploring these incredible artifacts with us. Each one holds stories of power, mystery, and human ingenuity that have endured through time. If you enjoyed this journey, please like the video, subscribe to Unearthed Secrets, and share where you're watching from. Keep discovering, keep imagining, and let history continue to whisper its secrets to you.